We're going to bust some Passover myths, misunderstandings, and just things that we occasionally get wrong. Passover in particular, it seems to be the big holidays, Christmas, Easter, stuff like that. But there's an ongoing misunderstanding, really, that many people have about one of the events at Passover that I'd love to clarify a little bit and help us to get a little more accurate. It begins actually with Palm Sunday, the triumphal entry. And we can read in all four Gospels, one of the few stories that's actually in all four, where Jesus is entering. And it says in Matthew 21, as they approached Jerusalem and came to Bethphage on the Mount of Olives, Jesus sent two disciples, saying to them, "Go to the village ahead, and at once you will find a donkey tied there, with her colt by her. Untie them and bring them to me. If anyone says anything to you, tell him that the Lord needs them, and he will send them right away." This took place to fulfill what was spoken through the prophet. Say to the daughter of Zion, see, your king comes to you, gentle and riding on a donkey, on a colt, the foal of a donkey. The disciples went and did as Jesus had instructed him. They brought the donkey and the colt, placed their cloaks on them, and Jesus sat on them. And here's where the confusion begins. A very large crowd spread their cloaks on the road, while others cut branches from the trees and spread them on the road. The crowds that went ahead of him and those that followed shouted, "Hosanna to the Son of David! Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord! Hosanna in the highest!" When Jesus entered Jerusalem, the whole city was stirred and asked, "Who is this?" The crowds answered, "This is Jesus, the prophet from Nazareth in Galilee." So huge crowds for the triumphal entry. Huge crowds laying down their cloaks and palm branches and welcoming Jesus into the city. When we say huge, we mean huge. Jerusalem at the time, estimates are that it had anywhere from 100,000 to 250,000 people. It was a decent sized little city, but it wasn't a real big city. But for major festivals, it swelled in size. People would be traveling from all around the world, the known world at that time, to come to Jerusalem for these festivals. And it could have a population of estimated between 1 and 2 million people for Passover. It's kind of like Branson during the summer, where this town of 10,000 will suddenly become 200,000. So you've got all of these people that are welcoming Jesus in. It's a crowd easily of tens of thousands. When it talks of a huge crowd, they're lining the roads, they're putting branches down. There's a lot of people welcoming him in. The whole city is astir. There's not a lot of people that aren't aware of this. Huge, okay? So keep that in mind. Let's just say, just for fun's sake, let's keep the number small, that there's 50,000 people. Out of 1 million, it's still a big crowd. It's going to make a commotion, okay? I just want to keep those numbers there just so you kind of have an idea of how many people are out there lining the roads. It's about 3 or 4 miles from Bethany all the way down into Jerusalem. And they're lined up all the way and shouting and singing and praising and making a ruckus and even into the city itself. So the common thought is you've got all of these people welcoming him in, and then less than a week later, you've got these huge crowds that are now shouting, "Crucify, crucify." Here's where the confusion and misunderstanding is. If you remember, Jesus had celebrated the Passover meal with his disciples on what we call Good Friday. Actually, probably would have been Thursday. So when you think about the timing, they have the meal, they celebrate the Last Supper, they go out to Gethsemane, they pray, and then here comes an entourage from the high priest who arrests Jesus at night. This is an important thing. What do people do at night? They sleep. So Jesus is arrested at a point when the city is either going to sleep or has already gone to sleep. He is then dragged at night before the Sanhedrin, before Caiaphas, before Pilate, back to the Sanhedrin. So all of these trials and everything that goes on is all done at night. The one exception might be when Pilate gave him over to be crucified. That might have been very early at the crack of dawn, while the city's still sleeping. So who was all these people yelling for him to be crucified? Well, Pilate would have been meeting in his court, probably in part of the fortress Antonia, which is where the Roman garrison was kept. His court would have been in the courtyard. He would have had a little throne set up there. And the courtyard would have held a decent number of people. I've, again, read different estimates, depending upon layout and where they think it was, of 200 to maybe up to 1,000 people. Okay, now keep in mind, when he's coming into the city, we're tens of thousands. Now we're 1,000 or less. It's still a good crowd, packed into a small space. They're still going to make a big noise. But who are these people? Well, who is it that wanted Jesus crucified? The Pharisees, the Sadducees, the high priests. They're all rabbis. So the Sanhedrin, if I remember right, was about 120 people. They're all rabbis. They all have their own disciples. They know what they want to get pushed through. So they're grabbing their own disciples, their own followers, and this 120 minus a few who are followers of Jesus, they're the ones that are in the courtyard. And they've got their followers with them. So let's just say that let's keep the numbers big for them and small for Jesus. Let's say that there's 100 Sadducees and Pharisees there. If those 100 each bring 5 to 10 of their own disciples, and 12 for Jesus is actually a moderate to small number compared to what a lot of them had. That's who's filling the courtyard, is the Pharisees, the Sadducees, and their disciples. That's it. They're the ones screaming, crucify. And they want this done in a hurry at night while the city is still sleeping and doesn't know. Because this 500 people or so, they don't want to get outmatched by the tens of thousands when they wake up. They want this done and in process by the Romans before the common people in the city wake up. Because they know if the common people wake up and realize it's the Sadducees and the Pharisees, this is not going to play well. But once Jesus is in the custody of the Roman soldiers and on his way, well, hey, then it's the Romans that did it. They don't have to worry. Get him off our back. The people aren't going to rise up against the Romans yet. They would later, about 35, 40 years later, but not yet. This is who is in that courtyard. So Friday, the triumphal entry, Palm Sunday, get my dates right, tens of thousands of people cheering. It's a completely different crowd in front of Pilate shouting for him to be crucified. The ones that wanted him gone because they saw him as a threat to their power base. That's who wanted Jesus crucified. The city begins to wake up, and here comes a common criminal procession. Romans crucified people all the time. They're dragging these criminals through the street, and wait a minute, that's not a regular... Who is that mangled person that's been beaten and everything? Oh my, is that Jesus? What happened to him? He was fine the other day. Now what happened? And the city is caught completely by surprise as they wake up. Jesus is probably on the cross 11 in the morning. It's not very late. He's dead by 3. So 6 hours, 9 in the morning. He's gone and being nailed up on the cross before most of the city is even aware that he's been arrested, let alone being crucified. They don't have a chance to respond, a chance to react, a chance to put a stop to it. They're not the ones shouting. They're the ones weeping when he's gone. We thought he was Messiah, and now he's dead. So don't get confused. The people that were cheering him for Palm Sunday were not shouting crucify later. The people that were shouting crucify were not cheering him on Palm Sunday. They're two very different groups of people, and they're not to be mixed up. So when you hear your minister honestly, mistakenly saying they cheered him one day and booed him the next, no, they didn't. It was different people. So just one myth about the Easter. well, misunderstanding, really, but about Easter and the crowds and everything. Would love to hear your questions, and we'll talk about some others coming up too.